We talk a lot about culture is local. And so if you're talking with us about our individual business units, they have culture that's local, and we want a lot of ownership at the local level. And so the mantra that I've used in the past there is empowerment without abandonment. So we want our business units to be empowered at a local level to create the culture, nurturing that culture as well as developing the vision, strategy, and operations needed to execute against it.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the podcast that spotlights leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. Together we go to the heart of leadership to discover the strategies and hard-earned lessons from pragmatic, gutsy leaders who operate in a world that is more steak than it is sizzle. I'm your host, Jim Weaver, Chief Executive Officer of the Owner Group, where we believe that real leadership matters. Let's go. Welcome back to Real Leadership. Today my guest is David Walker, President and CEO of EBSCO Industries. EBSCO began right here in Alabama in 1944 as a magazine subscription service, and over the last 75 years they've evolved into a global enterprise with businesses spanning manufacturing, distribution, information services, and real estate. Today, EBSCO is one of the 5 largest privately held companies in Alabama and one of the top 200 largest privately held companies in the United States. Dave has a public accounting background and came to EBSCO in 2000 as vice president and general manager of its military service company. And over the last 24 years, he has taken on multiple roles at EBSCO, including VP of Mergers and Acquisitions, CFO, COO, and then in 2017, David became president and CEO of the company. Dave also has a strong track record on the family front. He's been married to his wife, Lindy, for 30 years. They have 3 children, 2 of them married. One is a senior at Auburn and a new granddaughter. I also understand he's a heck of a pick-a-baller, so sounds like a good guy to get to know. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in. You're at the helm of a massive, diversified, enduring organization. Would you give us a brief history of EBSCO and then kind of give us the lay of the land of EBSCO today, what you do for a living, how you're organized? You kind of frame that up for us?
Sure, be glad to. So EBSCO stands for Elton B. Stevens Company, our founder, and he founded the business in college selling magazines door to door to raise funds for tuition, and over time grew that sales operation to become a selling manager by hiring his classmates to help him sell magazines door to door. He graduated from Birmingham Southern College, went on to the University of Alabama to go to law school, found that he was pretty good at sales. So at the time he graduated law school, he had an opportunity to go to work with a law firm, but decided that he could make more money in business, and so he continued that path. 80 years later, fast forward, that business that was door-to-door magazine sales operation is now one of the leading providers of research information, software, and services to the library end market globally, with presence in over 25 countries and salespeople located throughout the world wherever you would find higher education. We look at the business today really in 3 pillars. The first of those 3 pillars is EBSCO Information Services, which is the modern day version of that operation. It's headquartered in Ipswich, Massachusetts. And we have a second pillar called EBSCO Realty Investments, and in that pillar we have 2 developments, traditional neighborhood developments, one here in Birmingham called Mount Laurel and another along the panhandle of Florida called Alice Beach. And then in addition to those traditional neighborhood developments, we also have EBSCO Income Properties, which is a multifamily apartment community investment platform. And we own about 20 properties across the Sunbelt states. And then the third pillar we call EBSCO Diversified Businesses, very creative name for all the other businesses in our company. And we have 8 businesses in that group, and they range from electrical parts and components, distribution, to manufacturing, consumer products, insurance brokerage, and a number of other things. So altogether today, we have about $3.1 billion in revenue spread across 3 pillars and 12 underlying businesses.
Wow. In my research, I heard you talk about Jim Collins and his books, and you kind of hunkered down on the flywheel concept. So for our listeners, what's the flywheel, and how do you practically build strategy and tactics around this momentum?
Sure.
That is the flywheel. How do you do that?
Sure. Well, you did a good job with your research. That is one of my favorite books, and one that I talk quite a bit about with our teams. The whole premise of the book is about creating momentum within your business by doing the things that would naturally lead to the next thing. And example that he provides, and some of his original work there was with Amazon, and how they were looking at a flywheel from the standpoint of, if we have a lot of users, then that will naturally create more opportunities for sellers to come on the platform. If there are more sellers on the platform, then prices go down. And if prices go down, we can get more users. And so each step or element of the flywheel naturally created the momentum for the next step. And so as we look at our businesses, both from a corporate perspective and at the individual business unit level, and we're trying to find those ways that we can create momentum that builds upon itself over time, which ties to our overall vision for the company, which is to build and sustain profitable growth over generations. And the word that has to work really hard in that vision is sustain. You can have some random acts of success, but sustaining success over generations is the challenge that we have in our company.
Collins has another concept, the hedgehog principle. And the idea with that is great companies identify what they're good at and really double down on that. From the outside, looking at EBSCO, you guys are in so many sectors. It would be easy to think, wow, well, maybe they don't subscribe to that. I'm kind of left with two choices. Either one, you're a really successful company that doesn't subscribe to the hedgehog principle, or two, which I suspect is actually the answer, you have one, but it's just not evident to those of us on the outside. So which is it? And if you do, how would you describe your hedgehog?
So we
at EBSCO?
We certainly subscribe to that within our businesses. And so in all of our businesses, we talk a lot about creating competitive advantage. And I think that phrase is overused, and that competitive advantage really means differentiation, and differentiation is very difficult, which runs to the opportunity to create a moat for your business that provides that advantage. And so within our businesses, we certainly subscribe to that. Corporately, the way we would look at that is, because we're a long-term investor, and so we're quasi-permanent capital, we need to invest in businesses that have durability. So we want to invest in businesses that are solving problems that have existed, exist, and will exist in the future. And then we want those businesses to be investable. And what we mean by that is we want to be able to grow the business both organically and through acquisition. And so we feel like that is our hedgehog concept, in that if we can find those businesses that are both durable and investable, we feel like our ownership structure can be advantageous.
Okay. I'm thinking about maybe some of your outdoor brands. So the flywheel, applying the flywheel to your outdoor brand presence, how is that practically executed on? And you don't need to share anything proprietary, but just practically, how do you look to build that in a space like outdoor brands?
Sure. I think the primary way that we try to do that is through end user engagement. And so in that business, we're working with our customers through two-step distribution primarily, but engaging our customers on our platforms And it's similar to other situations where you create competitive advantage through creating communities. We try to achieve that through our outdoor brands group. So if we can attract more end users, more enthusiasts, whether it be in hunting or fishing, the more people that are part of the community, the more people want to join the community, and that becomes a little bit of the flywheel effect within that business.
Yeah, I can see that. With such geographic and industrial diversification, a lot of your businesses have come through acquisition. How do you think about company culture?
Yeah, we think and we talk a lot about culture is local. And so if you're talking with us about our corporate office at the EBSCO Industries level, we have a culture within that group. But if you're talking about our individual business units, they have culture that's local. And while we certainly don't have any elements of our culture that are in conflict between the parent company and our business units, we want a lot of ownership at the local level. And so the mantra that I've used in the past there is empowerment without abandonment. So we want our business units to be empowered at a local level to create the culture. They're responsible for nurturing that culture as well as developing the vision, strategy, and operations needed to execute against it.
How do you think about checks and balances with those kind of independent business units? I would think there's some constraints. How do you think about that? We kind of have the same challenge. We definitely have empowered our regional leadership to build a business within our business, and it's just it's interesting to try to think through. Okay, well, what are the non-negotiables? How do you guys think about that?
No, it's a great question, and I think a lot of companies experience tension between the two. I think if you look at sort of the old style or old school conglomerates, it was very much a situation where headquarters or the parent company, operated through a command, control, and compliance kind of leadership. And I would say that's completely the other end of the spectrum today, where we want independence. So we want the businesses to have independence. We want them to be focused on what they're really good at, getting back to your prior question. And then we want to align incentives in a way that create the behaviors for them to act entrepreneurially. So there are checks and balances that we work with them on from a financial perspective and cash management perspective. But as it relates to the vision and the strategy of the business, we want them to own those things. And so we resist the temptation to put our fingers in. So we may have our nose in, but we try to keep our fingers out and reserve the decision making for very limited situations so that they have the autonomy to make those decisions.
Then what happens if they're not hitting the targets that you guys agree? I would assume you work together to set the targets. They're coming to you with the targets that they have for the business, the outcomes they want, and you're going back and forth on that and settling on, okay, this looks good. We agree this looks good. What happens if they don't hit it? Do you step in more? How does that look?
Yeah, no, great question. We do believe in accountability, so that's a key element of our overall governance structure. We have several mindsets that we talk a lot about internally, and these are the things that we would like all of our businesses to share because they do own culture locally. We do think that it's important that there be a similar set of behaviors, and we call them mindsets. It's the way we think, the way we act, the way we interact. One of those is being results driven. And when we talk about that, when we talk about the fact that we play to win, we keep score, we try to make decisions based on data versus opinions. And that's where that relationship with our business units comes into play. If there's not performance at the levels that we've set expectations to achieve, then there's accountability in terms of what do we need to do to get back on the pathway to growth that we've mutually agreed is possible.
It's interesting. I love the way you say that, the empowerment without abandonment, because you're trying to strike a balance, a middle ground there. And a lot of times when people think empowerment, they think abandonment is really what they're thinking. Like just leave them alone.
Or maybe wanting.
Right. And I think we as an organization have kind of swung. We had swung toward the abandonment side, and we've come back to maybe a little bit too much on the direct support.
Sure.
Or development. I'm going to develop you. You can't. We can create the conditions for development, conditions for growth, but I can't act upon someone and they have to own that. So it is really it's the $1 billion, or in your case, $5 billion question or whatever, $1 billion question for us.
It's interesting. It takes a lot of finesse with that, and certainly, our team from a corporate perspective is going to be into the details at a level that we can have conversations with our business units about their business. And so empowerment does not mean that we're going to pull back and not be involved in the details, but it does mean that we're going to give them the autonomy they need to be entrepreneurial. And that's what we believe in. We believe that if you have the right people in the right seats, that if you give them the opportunity to be entrepreneurial, you give them the incentives, they will behave in a way to achieve the overall objectives. And so we want to empower that as much as we can.
You think about your business units with the best retention or the greatest percentage of long-term contributors. What do you think are the characteristics of those business units that have the best tenure? Why do the people that stick with you guys for a long period of time, why do they stick around, do you think?
I think it's them buying into our overall mission, which is to create positive results. And when we talk about creating positive results, we talk about that in really three areas: in our people, in our businesses, and in the communities where we live and work. On the people side, as a benefit of being a family-owned business, we can make the right decision for our people. And so areas like retirement and profit sharing, areas like benefits, are areas where the family that owns our company has been very generous and has rewarded above market in those areas. So I think our people feel like they're well treated from that perspective, as well as the opportunity to develop and grow within our company. On the business side, the family's committed to reinvesting back in the company, and that gives us the opportunity to continue to grow the business over the long term. And then from a community perspective, which is something that's very important to our team members, we give 5% of our profits annually to charitable organizations, principally in Alabama. Wow. And so that has been very key for our people, knowing that we are investing in our community and that we're a purpose-driven organization.
Yeah, wonderful. Thinking about your team, what's a character trait that you wish you could instill in every employee, or maybe you look for in anyone that you hire?
Yeah, I think for me, it always comes back to humility. And I think a lot of things flow from humility. If you think about the characteristics of the people that that are humble, they tend to be service-oriented, so they put others first. They tend to think about growth and continuous improvement. I think the most creative ideas and most of our innovation comes from people that have a very humble mindset in terms of always thinking about there's a better way, there's a better approach. They have the patience to listen to our customers and end users, to hear what their needs are and then respond to those. So I think humility would be the top of my list.
Yeah. Curiosity kind of flows out of humility, right?
It's hard not to have those other characteristics if you're a humble person. Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about and doing some reading around the season that we're in this world. It seems, and I'd be curious how you feel about this. It seems to me that these are interesting times to be alive and be leading an organization. There's a lot of change. It seems like there's a lot of polarization. There's a lot of socioeconomic tension and there's wars brewing and high credit, high debt levels. There are a lot of factors leading to just a sense of volatility right now. I just came through a pandemic. So how do you think about this season that we're in? Do you think this is actually a stormy season we're in, or is it not? And it just feels like it because we're in it. And how are you thinking about navigating the times that we're in?
Sure. Well, it certainly feels like a stormy season. I think on the other side of the pandemic, there's still adjustments that are being made. I think people are still adjusting to sort of the right level of flexibility in work environment. We're still seeing some supply chain issues that haven't quite resolved themselves post-pandemic. So I think the long-term implications of the pandemic are yet to be seen. And I do think there will be some positive, but I think there'll be some negatives as well. And so I think we're probably a year removed from being in the first year where the economy is somewhat free of the cascading effects of the pandemic. You combine that with obviously a lot of polarization around politics in our own country and then geopolitical issues around the world. It certainly seems like we're in a stormy season. From an economic perspective, I think on the industrial side, we've been in somewhat of a mild recession, and I think that's a factor that has been due to part of that pandemic recovery. But I see that improving in 25 and 26 as the interest rate environment begins to improve.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think manufacturing in the U.S. is trending over the next couple of decades?
I think companies, including ours, are continuing to look at how to diversify supply chain, and I certainly think as any election period, you're thinking about the potential implications of the outcome. I think a lot of companies, including ours, are looking at what are some alternative sources of supply within our business to make sure that we mitigate that risk as much as we can.
I had read that the U.S. net import had actually, as a percentage of GDP, had actually peaked out, like 5 to 7 years ago, something like that. And it feels like there's a momentum toward bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Are you feeling that as well?
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. We've seen that in our businesses, both from the standpoint of what we're doing onshore versus, what we're sourcing domestically that we may have sourced, internationally in the past. And so I think with the potential threat of tariffs and other geopolitical risk associated with supply chains, you're going to see more manufacturing come back to the U.S.
Yeah. We'll take a left turn here. So you're the leader of a large organization. Leaders set the tone, right? You set the standard for motivation, energy levels. What do you do to show up inspired, ready to go each day?
I think it's, the thing I love about business, being a competitive person, is just the competition that you have in business. No matter what, your business activity is, every day is a competition. There's a scoreboard. You know how you're doing when you look at the scoreboard, and I think that is the motivator to meet with our teams, engage our teams, to get them to buy in to the vision that we have for the company, and then win. Everyone loves winning, and we've really tried to create an environment where we can create winning cultures where people enjoy what they're doing because you're winning. But you don't always win, so you've got to also keep the team motivated in situations where you're not winning, and what needs to be done to get that turned in the right direction.
some habits or routines that you've developed over the years to gin up for that, or to make sure you're on point for that, or is that it's just in you? You don't even have to work at it.
No, I definitely have to work at it. I would say there are a few things for me from a personal perspective. I believe you need to have an adequate amount of rest. So I'm an early to bed, early to rise individual, and also like to mix in exercise, and would love to say I eat very healthy, but that is a day by day and very situational call. But I enjoy reading. I read a great deal. I enjoy studying. I enjoy getting into the details, and those habits of sort of starting my day early, have been very motivating for me, because by the time the normal workday starts, I'm sort of energized from the work I've done until that point, and it allows me to go in with a positive mental attitude with our teams.
Yeah. What's a book you've read in the last year that's been particularly impactful for you?
Probably the most recent book I read was a book called The Advantage by Pat Lencioni. And it's really focused on organizational health, and it's something that I've become passionate about in terms of what can be done to create a talent advantage in our business. And I think that organizational health is number one on the list. And when I think about organizational health, I think about, having a learning organization where we're continuously improving, we're acquiring knowledge and sharing, we're innovating and experimenting, we're testing the results of that, making data-driven decisions, and then spending time reflecting on what we learned and then doing it again. And to me, organizational health, in any given company is going to be a difference maker in the ultimate results of the business, as well as the level of engagement of your team.
Being a learning organization is an ambition of ours as well. So how do you do that?
Yeah, the question I asked our team recently, we had a leadership conference where we brought together the leadership teams from all of our businesses, and the question that I challenged them with was, what if EBSCO knew what EBSCO knows? With the point behind that question being, we're a very broad, as you pointed out earlier, broadly diversified business and a lot of different business activities, yet there are a lot of similarities, there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of challenges that we experience across the spectrum of our business. By way of example, I'll use generative AI, since that's a topic that everyone likes to talk about. So in all of our businesses, we have various innovative efforts or experiments currently in play from a Gen AI perspective. But if we all operate in silos, we never get the benefit of EBSCO knowing what EBSCO knows, because EBSCO should know the breadth of that. And so we've pulled together communities of practice like for Gen AI, where we can learn from each other. So the key is making sure that those businesses are talking in a way that we are learning both vertically. So within those businesses, they're sharing information and the business is learning within itself, but then we're also learning horizontally, which is where the EBSCO piece comes in. And we talk about the economies you have as a company like EBSCO. A lot of those economies that existed for conglomerates in the past have eroded, but some that still exist, economies of scale, where we get some benefit of size and we can have businesses that are smaller act big as a part of our company. But the one that I'm really focused on from a value creating capability perspective is the economies of scope. And that's the benefit that we have from the scope of our business in addition to the scale of our business.
I would think that would be a great situation for folks that come into your organization that are looking for upward mobility, progression. There'd be a lot of different opportunity within the EBSCO family, I imagine, right?
Yes. I mean, aspirationally, we'd love to get to a place where, we're constantly matching talent with opportunity. And so by way of example, we have all of our businesses have sales functions, they have marketing functions, go down the list of functional areas that we have. as we have opportunities in our businesses around the company, it would be great to match the best talent we have in the pipeline with those next step up opportunities. So that's something we aspire to do. It's sometimes difficult because of location, but in a world where people are acting and working more virtually than they did in the past, it's become more possible than it once was.
Yeah. So you've been married for 30 years, and you've raised what it seems like well-adjusted children that are now adults, and your first grandchild, and it's one thing to have a successful career. It's another thing to have a successful career and a successful family life. What advice do you give a 20, 30-year-old who has a fledgling family but also a fledgling career? Is balance possible? How do you navigate that? What are the lessons you've learned? What advice would you give?
Sure. Well, I don't think I did a great job of that as a younger professional. And when I talk about the benefits of the pandemic, the one that I talk about most is the change in that sort of work-life balance that people talk about, or work-life harmony, if you want to characterize it that way. And I think that the difference for those ages today versus when I was at that age is, when I was at that age, you shaped your life around your work. And so I did the best I could with that, and hopefully my family would say I did reasonably well. But in today's environment, because of the changes we've seen, past the pandemic, we really shape our work around our life. And I think the thought of someone working remote or working from home in early part of my career was very foreign, whereas today that's obviously a part of the culture, and I think it's allowed people to find better balance in their lives. And in a lot of respects, I'm a little envious that it didn't exist when I came along. But I think that this generation is working very hard, but the way they shape that work is different than what it was in the more traditional, conventional, work day and work location that we had in the past.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we've found we're in the staffing business, and with our contingent workforce, we have a flex program now where we are allocating a certain number of shifts with many of our customers to the flex program. If there's 50 shifts that need to be covered, we'll put together a pool of 200 people that want to work, and each week they sign up for the shifts, and it's worth probably $5 an hour to people to have that flexibility. So you're paying 16, you get somebody that their market value is $21 an hour because it's a second job. It's they're in school. They're home with kids a lot of the time. It's been interesting. We were kind of opposed to it. It felt like day labor at first, but the reality is, because of technology, we're accessing a really great demographic that's on the sidelines by accommodating. It's not for everybody, but I think the flexibility thing is a really interesting thing to explore with your businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that trend is here to stay.
Yeah, I think you're right. How do you foster, I guess the thing that's maybe lost is that connectedness when your team's spread out everywhere, the water cooler conversation, the thought that comes to you and you got to get on a call. How are you guys balancing that out? How do you think about balancing that out?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversation about it, as I'm sure a lot of your clients have. And the thing that I always come back to in these conversations is, at the end of the day, we're in the people business, and I believe that people need community. And so whether it's 1 day a week or 2 days a week, or pick the number of days per week, I feel like people need the community to get together. And I'm a strong believer that from the standpoint of continuous improvement, creativity, innovation, that these things happen when people are shoulder to shoulder and elbow to elbow. And so I believe that balance is important, and I think flexibility is important, but you can't achieve that community without having some in-person time. And so that looks a little different for all of our businesses. It's another decision that we delegate to them based on what's best for their business, what's best for their customers. And they've all been able to work that out in a way that it's met the needs of all of our stakeholders.
Yeah. Empowerment without abandonment. Love it. Well, let's land it there, David. Very good talking with you. Congratulations on all the success over there. How can folks find out more about you, EBSCO?
Sure.
What's the best way to connect?
You can connect with us on LinkedIn. You can connect with us at our website, ebscoind.com. You can connect with me at davidwalker@ebsco.com. And so I look forward to talking with anyone that might be interested in reaching out.
Great. Well, we'll put that in the show notes as well. All right, David, thank you so much for your time.
Enjoyed it, Jim.
Until next time, keep it real. Thank you for listening. This podcast was powered by Own It, a family of staffing companies providing real staffing solutions to manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies across the United States of America. To get in touch or learn more about partnering with an Own It Group company, visit us at www.ownitgroup.com. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.